tables back there, but we're going to get started. We're excited this afternoon to have a panel discussion with two major leaders in Northwest Indiana on workforce development. A good job is critical. A job that moves individuals, families into the middle class and higher. Jobs that allow for growth, skills development, economic mobility are what we want to see flourish in Calumet Township. But that just doesn't happen. A lot of companies are coming here. We have a convention center that was announced today. We have Hard Rock Casino. We have a lot of employers that have major healthcare. We've already got major healthcare organizations, but there's all these jobs, but how do we ensure that our residents are qualified for them, that the wraparound services are there for folks to thrive once they get those jobs? One of the biggest challenges we have are soft skills. Technical knowledge can often be taught, even on the job, but it's that showing up on time. Recognizing that there are some professions like transportation and healthcare where you cannot enjoy certain herbs and expect to pass the mandatory drug tests, right? That come with many high-paying jobs, especially in our transportation-heavy, logistics-heavy, and even healthcare-heavy to an extent region. We also know that, it's been said many times, our poverty rate is near 40%, which is astronomical and unacceptable. We know our unemployment rate is high. We know that we have to ensure that we are building people working together with the K-12 school system, working with the community college system, working with the university system, working with all the nonprofits who are doing workforce development to ensure that the skills for which we are preparing people are actually relevant for the jobs that are here now and the jobs that we forecast to be here 5, 10, 20 years from now. We know that artificial intelligence is transforming our way we do work, and it's not happening day by day, it's happening by the second, right? There's a new app for taking notes. There's a new app to create a song within 10 seconds, right, or less. And so how do we ensure that our communities are not left behind? I mean, we're just starting to talk about the digital divide. But now we've moved far beyond having access to Wi-Fi and internet. It's, can you understand how to work artificial intelligence and still remain relevant as an employee? So, there's a lot to talk about that's very relevant, and I'm excited to have that conversation with two superstars in this space. Dr. Helen Zarletta is the director of the Indiana University Northwest Center for Urban and Regional Excellence and a professor in the School of Public and Environmental Affairs, affectionately known as SPIA, at Indiana University Northwest, right here in our community. She works with communities in Northwest Indiana to identify issues of concern and develop, there's that word again, collaborative approaches to advancing the quality of life in the region. She's a lawyer, she's an economist, and she's very active. You'll see her in many organizations, many conversations just like this one when it comes to economic development, sustainability, workforce within our region. We're also honored to have Ms. Lisa Doherty, who is the CEO of the Center for Workforce Innovations, which plays a pivotal role in the workforce development space within our community. Before that, she was president and CEO of Lake Area United Way. So she has a lot of knowledge on these conversations. She led the organization for a significant transition to a new community impact model, focused on strengthening low-income working families by helping them access financial education resources, child care, and better paying jobs. All still very relevant, even in our current capacity. There's a lot of exciting work that her organization is leading even right now with the city of Fair. So, want to ask each of you 3 to 5 minutes. Give us your perspective, your vantage point, what you see when it comes to the future of work in Northwest Indiana. We'll start with Ms. Dory.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me catch my breath before I sat down. I literally ran from the parking lot. My apologies. Of course, stuff happens as soon as you're trying to walk out the door, right? So, as it relates to, before I get into the future, let me just say a few words about what I learned coming into this role, which was during COVID, by the way. And the whole landscape around workforce shifted immensely. It didn't take too long though. I came into this role because I wanted to change the system, the public workforce system in particular. What I saw, Chris, you know this, what I saw at United Way was that the public workforce system wasn't necessarily working well for the residents that needed access. And I wanted to change that. Harder than I expected, but the revelation for me was that as much as I want to bring it, workforce development has to happen from within the communities to be sustainable. So my organization has resources, and we'll hear more about that. We know best practices, we have technical skills, but you all have the relationships, the trust, and the commitment, the profound commitment. I don't want that to sound like I don't have the profound commitment, because I do. But to the individuals, and the city can build their own capacity, right, by providing workforce development to its residents in partnership with us. So as it relates to the future, you mentioned the word you said there that word is again, collaboration. We have fewer people. The birth rate has been declining. We have an aging workforce. So by the numbers, we have less human assets than we do demand. So we've got to be far more strategic, data-driven, deliberate, and collaborative around that. And I'll give you an example. We're working with the city of Gary in a way that we've never worked before. And it's exciting because I'll use the FedEx announcement as an example. So we know that jobs are coming. We know that in that agreement, jobs were written in. We know that workforce development was written into that as well. So now we have time to work with residents and prepare them. So that was very deliberate on the mayor's part, and puts us at the table sooner so that we can promote the opportunities. What I also know from my Level Up, my United Way days, is that there's a lot of opportunity, but folks don't know how to access it. And they don't know, they want to be upskilled, they want to be trained, but they don't know what those opportunities are and how to access them. So it's a community effort. Categories, when I look at the region, and as well as what we know is coming to the city, health, you mentioned healthcare, you mentioned transportation, logistics, those are at the top. There's a lot of construction that goes along with that. Look at your announcement today about the convention. I mean, that whole hospitality and entertainment. Sometimes I worry about the entry-level jobs because they're not a family-sustaining livable wage, but they're an entry into a career where there is a lot of upward mobility. The future, we aspire for quantum, technology, cybersecurity. There is a great deal of data technology, opportunity, energy, new energy, advanced manufacturing. Manufacturing is in our wheelhouse, but we've got to advance those skills. So from where I sit, the outlook is terrific. And the fact that we're coming together and working in ways means that we're going to realize that opportunity for the residents. That might have been longer than
Oh, you're good, you're good. Dr. Zarletta?
Sure. Good afternoon.
Dr. Newbill?
I would, if I could say ditto, that's probably the best way to make this extremely short.
That's good.
But I did want to add a few other thoughts, maybe at this from higher education perspective. I think we are extremely well poised to be able to address some of the most development issues because we're here today asking the question. That's step number one, right? Is where are we and where are we going to go? So that, the answer to that is exactly as Lisa said, looking at what resources we have available to us, thinking about them in terms of assets and opportunities, recognizing barriers, but thinking about assets and opportunities, and then making sure that those assets are connected to the people who need the jobs, who can foster the growth and improve the quality of life here in Northwest Indiana. And that's a tricky part. That's what Lisa was talking about. So how do you make sure that people can connect to those resources? One of which is higher education. So I'm going to say just a note about that. We are one of the resources. We are a resource for research. It's important to make decisions based on data that public work people don't necessarily like, right? It brings up bad images of math and all those things. But data tells us not only where we are, but can make projections for where we need to be. So moving in the direction of, intentionally setting priorities and using the information that we have and figuring out what we don't have and what we really need. And certainly, Lisa's organization is top-notch in that area. But collaborating to do that at an even higher scale. The next thing that I would say with respect to collaboration is let's scale the current thinking about where we are, but also let's scale the future thinking about where we are. And so that is, I think, something that we, especially when we're facing immediate challenges, we don't always think about because we're so focused on the present. But the rest of the world and the United States is moving on, and we have international work, we have transportation center of the country sitting right here, right? We have recreational resources. We have so many areas where we could grow and develop and use the human resources that we have to make this a better place. So that's what I was thinking. I'm optimistic.
That's the way to be.
Yeah.
We are as well. Let's think about the labor market outlook. Right? We know that there are job growth projections, job growth trends. We talked about some of those areas and what our preparation is currently to meet the demand, right? You can take a supply approach or a demand approach. You can kind of create a job and hope it comes. So you can look at what's actually demanded, as it were, by the market, and what employers are saying that they need to see in order to come here or to grow.
All these questions are just so, there's just so much, right, to think about. So I'm gonna focus on what I see in the data with the city of Gary in terms of that preparation, okay? And some of this you may know instinctively already, but I'm sharing because these are the data factors that matter and where I see we can make strong incremental progress to scale. I love the word scale. So one of our challenges, which I always see as opportunity, is around education attainment. When I look at the zip codes that make up Gary, in my opinion, we have too many residents that have not earned their high school diploma or equivalency. And This is a challenge for us. And there are a lot of providers in your community, and you know, WDS, we offer adult ed literacy through the Work One environment. You know, we've got Erie Middle College, so we have a lot of partners that are trying to work better at referring that, right? Because the experience is different for people. We are introducing, with the job market being what it is, and I'm thinking about a wider net than just Erie. There are so many jobs available, fewer people. Too often folks think that they don't need that high school equivalency, right? Because they can get a job. The problem is it limits that upward mobility. And so short-term that works, but I really worry about the long-term upward mobility. What's happening now is we're weaving skill training into adult education. So at the same time somebody can go for their high school equivalency, we've got fast track models so they can do that quickly. We're weaving in training, like for example, if you're familiar with Pastor Walton, we've established a pre-apprenticeship around construction. So students can earn their high school equivalency, immediately go right into NCCER construction training. We have an articulation agreement with the Carpenters Union. When they accomplish that training, then they are ready for the apprenticeship in that skilled trades program, and we're expanding that. So we've got to look at the increments and have people gain those credentials moving forward and opening up other opportunities.
Thank you. Dr. Zala?
Yeah, Lisa made me think that's one of the things I forgot what the original question was.
So this is the problem. I said an hour is a long time, but I guess it isn't.
Right.
Looking at our labor market on the demand, where we see the jobs headed, and are we meeting that demand and what we should be doing to be better prepared?
Okay. So I think broad strategy across the board, thinking about short-term skill labor to transition individuals from high school or GED into employment is obviously right. And so if you look at the figures on poverty, what you see, and I'm not saying everybody should get a college education, but you see the direct link between the level of education and the level of poverty. So I'll just give you an example. The level of poverty for those individuals with less than a high school degree is like 45%. Now, some of that is due to the fact that there's a disconnect between their skill set and the jobs that are in the area. I'm not saying that you can't get a job if you don't have a high school degree, right? But the steep decline occurs as you get more education. And so if you have a college education in Gary specifically, the poverty rate is somewhere between like 11 and 12%. So we're talking a significant reduction, right? But all along, no matter what degree of education you have, the more education you can see is correlated with the reduction in poverty. So what does that mean then for jobs? It means that let's be intentional about what skills we think we need now, what skills we need in the future, and then providing those educational opportunities for the students to decide where they want to fit in that picture for the area and for Northwest Indiana. Some skills, because of AI, are going, what I was just reading the other day was that people like paralegals, L1s, those would be like lawyers just getting out of law school, those people are going to be, I won't say replaced, but many of their functions and tasks are being taken over by AI. What does that mean? It means as soon as you're coming out of college, you're going to need an even higher level of skill. The same thing is going to be true in other jobs. So we have to think about what that's going to look like.
It's excellent. A lot to teach. What I'm hearing from both of you is the importance of partnerships. And so, Lisa, if you could delve more deeply into how the partnership with the city of Gary happened, what models did you follow? Are there successful models in other areas that we can build on to do more of that work that will have a direct impact on residents?
So have you heard of what started out as the Think Big initiative, but we're now calling it Work Big? Okay, that game changer for my organization, the Public Workforce System, working with the city of Gary. Very deliberately, the mayor wanted to address blight remediation. And he heard about a program from Detroit, like, so taking what works in other places is awesome. And we built in not just the work experience and training around that blight remediation, but we thought bigger than that by thinking about the largest and projected short-term, 5 years, pathways. So to your point about transferable skills, they're learning the specific training they need to do the blight remediation, to ultimately, many of them, be hired by the city. So we're building the city's capacity at the same time, but we're being very deliberate about assessing their interests, because this is a piece that I think is missing. We need to spend more time up front. Whatever kids need, adults need. They need exposure. They need to understand what the opportunities are. They need to know what they like, because it's work, right? It's work. You gotta like what you do to work. So we're assessing their interests, and then the training that they're getting in that 15 weeks will also prepare them. I know you can't read that from here, but various pathways like supply chain logistics, construction, manufacturing, etc. So we're building and training for those transferable skills. Somebody mentioned work ethic, those soft skills. Every single employer that I ever sit with wants that. It's lacking. We've got to get adults and kids more exposed to what that means. Eye contact, showing up on time, and how valuable that is. And employers will say, if I can just get individuals with those skills, I can train them.
That's so true. That's so true. And with the economic stance, Ellen, that's striking. When you think about the benefit of even an associate's degree, right, toward a bachelor's degree, and helping students understand, helping adults. Because a lot of times when we say student, we have in our mind, earlier Terrell told us to close our eyes and imagine. When we say student, we close our eyes to think of someone who's 10 years old, or 14 years old. And I think what I'm also hearing is we have to see all of ourselves as lifelong learners, lifelong students. You will not be able to thrive in this current economy or in the future economy trying to hold on to what you learned 30 years ago. So how do you ensure that there's an upskilling that happens even once you get into a job so that you're able to have that economic mobility? I want to kind of double down on your point, Ellen, about that growth that happens with the attainment of a high school degree or the GED equivalency, the attainment of the associates, and so on. How do we do a better job? What's missing from this table is our K-12 system, right, and our community college system, which we will build on in the fall. How do we ensure that students, whether you're 14, 10, 18, or 48, understand how they can move along a pathway toward economic mobility, toward increased income, right, and relevance, right, to be able to keep your job. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, it's a multi-pronged strategy, right? First, we want to be able to set the expectation of youth. So one of the ways you can do that is by providing them with really early learning experiences surrounding careers in college. So an example that I'll give you, but there are many good ones out there, I'll speak to this because I know about it, is Kids College at IU West, where middle school students spend 2 weeks on our campus, and they're introduced to 5 different career areas, and so they're taking on field trips exposed to professionals, so that would be my second point, which is modeling and mentorship is absolutely essential, right? So when they have that expectation that whether it's IU Northwestern or Purdue or another college, is a place that's accessible to them, they can start to think about that as a possibility. That's what they would like. And then we have the relationship with our K-12 schools with dual credit. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. Students earning college credits early on, whether it's with IB or with IB as Plus. So again, reaching back, setting expectations, providing them with role models, that's all going to be extremely important. And then once they're in the setting, whether it's higher ed at 2 or 4 year, providing them, connecting that then back to the real world, back to experience, back into internships. We're really thinking very carefully about bringing these experiences into the classrooms. So many times the classes we have at IU Northwest are project-based. And so we really work directly with community partners so that the students can see what we're learning is relevant.
And I just want to, Ellen, you talk about the modeling and the mentorship, and there's absolutely a shortage of that. Collaborators focus, looking at ways to help employers even, like they're looking for ways to transfer that knowledge that their experienced workers have to the newer workers that are coming in. The other point that I want to make, beyond, in addition to the modeling and mentoring, you cannot, should not underestimate the need, the power, the impact of just even cheering people on, right? That I learned that at United Way to level up. The folks that are just entering a new training or a new career, there's a confidence issue, right? They've had some, for a whole host of reasons. There's been negative reinforcement. They thrive when they get that positive reinforcement. So even, we've talked about, Gary has active sorority groups that I'm just going to use as an example. If we could engage some of those individuals, and maybe even you that are with different organizations, to volunteer to be a cheerleader for some of these individuals that are stepping into new spaces with training. And even just that the value of cheering them on and relating to them makes a huge difference. And we don't have resources for that under the workforce development funding that we have. And that's a great way for ambassadors, in the community it's a critical role, and we need help with that.
Absolutely. One of the things that we have public safety that's here today, that I saw during my time on the council, and you hear about it around the country, the public sector historically has been a vital employment source for African Americans in this country, right? Just to be frank, City of Gary, Calumet Township is a large African American population. When we think about the Postal Service, for my dad, as postmaster, when I was growing up, we think about the police department, the fire department, the city, the county, the state, all of these, the school district, right? All of these employers that helped a lot of folks reach and stay in the middle class. It's become increasingly difficult, I know, especially our fire department, our police department, to recruit and retain talent in those spaces that have pensions, that have middle income salaries, thanks to several raises by the Area Government Council, the City of Gary, and cities throughout the region who have to do that to remain competitive. And there's an attack, right? Not being political, on the public workforce, right? Whether it's at the federal level, state, county, local, there are also stereotypes about public employees. And there are concerns that coming generation, right, does not see the public sector as exciting, as fun, or maybe now, depending on your feed, your social media feed, you may have to think the public sector is the enemy, right, or a problem. So how do we combat that narrative and push back against it? Because we know there are tons of jobs available right now, right, in fire departments, police departments, City of Gary, that we will need people in those jobs that have pensions, right? And that are middle incomes. Thoughts on public sector employment?
No. So one of the things that comes to mind immediately for me, because we've had some success with this, and it may seem like it's off topic, but it's not. So when you think about skilled trade, right, unions, you think about apprenticeship model, right? Like, so many times it's assumed that apprenticeship is a union concept, and it's not. They've just made it great. Like, they've leveraged it to the nth degree, and it's done well. Cities, municipalities should look at that apprenticeship model as an opportunity to engage, provide residents with work experiences, training, an opportunity to grow throughout all of the different types of jobs. I mean, like, city administration is a fabulous employer to test and move people through so many different pathways and opportunities that can ultimately transfer into other employment eventually. The loyalty that builds to the city itself is extraordinary, and you're building your capacity at the same time. So looking at apprenticeship as a modern apprenticeship, incorporating working, so earning, and learning together helps fill a gap with employment and capacity and expose residents to those opportunities and build pride.
Alan, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, Lisa really drove home the point about identifying opportunities and reducing barriers. And so I want to talk about something that's a little bit different. It's about changing culture, and I'm coming at this from a public sector perspective, having been in the public sector, teaching in a public policy school. And so I would say that everything that Lisa has said is so critical. We have to be able to make that alignment take place. We also have to think about what public sector means to us. What does it mean to be a public servant? And when we have those, when should we and when do we have those conversations with our youth? Because through education, the history of education, we've not only educated people to do certain things, but we've educated people to be citizens. And part of that is an understanding of what it means to be part of a country, community, city, county, whatever that is, and realizing what that public entity does for us. If we don't have appreciation for that, we won't want to support it, and we certainly won't want to go into any careers in it. But on the barrier side, so I don't know what that looks like. It's very complicated. In Indiana, we did now put government at a lower level. It's on the middle school, which we didn't used to do. So it's sort of shocking to me, and I'll just say it publicly. This is Ellen Sheldon speaking, not acting speaking. Okay, that we weren't educating those students at an early age about what government is about, right? So now we made progress. On the training and barrier side, we work with partnerships. We work in partnership with the Y and police departments to reduce the barriers to entry for police exams. That has been really powerful in changing the composition of police departments in this region. And women were hired in departments that were hired before, not because they were trying to discriminate against women, but because women couldn't get to the physical exam because they didn't have the knowledge they needed to perform the physical tests in the correct way. So if we show people how to do this, eliminate the barriers, we will see these changes in barriers.
Thank you. We're going to get to public comment very soon. Workforce opportunity, workforce innovation and opportunity Act, right? 2014. That was a major move during the Obama administration from the former Workforce Investment Act. And now we know there are challenges there, right?
It's going to be the done.
So we have to deal with the elephant in the room that many of our workforce development efforts are federally funded. What are your thoughts about how we respond to the change in the Job Corps? I think that's the DOGE focus this week, I believe. We've already seen AmeriCorps be stripped and attacked. And so a lot of these federally funded programs that have been critical to support what we're doing on the ground, here in Calumet Township and across the country are under attack. And so what do we do with resources that we do have, right? So we do have the Calumet Township Trustee, which has a workforce development component. Trustee has laid out a vision that we're not just looking to give out checks, right? We actually want to help lift people out of the system, right? To become productive, earning, middle income residents, right? We want them to be improved and not lifelong users of the system. So, all that to say, what do you see in terms of how nonprofit organizations, government, employers in Lake County, in Northwest Indiana, what will we have to do to successfully respond to these attacks?
Yeah, and I will say that I personally have used that word, right, attack. That's exactly how I feel about what's happening with workforce. That said, I think a lot of this is language, right? I do think there are going to be investments. So for the record, because I've lost a lot of sleep over this past weekend, the WIOA, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, largely funds the public workforce system. Our allocations were published at the state level, but you know, what they received trickles down. We actually, Indiana saw an increase. Okay, so that's a relief. I think that the way legislators see workforce development is changing. And, you know, we're going to see maybe less investment in the coaching and the readiness, you know, like workshops that help with resumes and interviewing and all that. There might be some reduction in that spending, but greater spending around skill training and apprenticeship. So I'm kind of holding my breath, waiting to see what the priorities are going to be. I don't think they're going to be that far off. They're just going to be labeled differently. I mean, funding's being cut. I don't know where it's going to come from. So I'm not saying there's going to be a windfall, but I do think that skills training is a major priority, and I know it is for the state. I was just with the Secretary of Commerce this morning. Upskilling workers is the number one priority that they mentioned. As it relates to nonprofits working together, and I'll use Calumet Township as an example. Thank you for having me. Like, this is already new. We haven't been invited to come and speak to the partners, so we've already started something new. And the dialogue around how we identify inefficiencies or duplication and how we complement each other is going to be critical so we do have efficiency. I wasn't here this morning, so Chris, I apologize if you said this. Like, I love Cherry Tracker. We've adopted that as our major referral source. It is a critical platform that everyone should use. But the innovation and the game-changing component to that is in the dialogue and the change in the behavior that happens. Not just, like, I know this already because Workone just started using the platform, but they didn't talk about how it was going to change their work or how they were going to respond, what they were going to do with that information. So as partners, we've got to have more dialogue about what each other does, eliminate duplication, and figure out how to complement so that we can make those outcomes more effective and more productive and attract them. We don't attract them to that.
That's right on point. There's an old saying, what gets measured gets managed, right? And you can't manage what you're not measuring. Ellen?
Yeah, I don't have much to add there. I think the only other, if we're talking about keywords, collaboration, partnership, I would add flexibility and adaptability, resilience. That's something that I would add there. So thinking about how we can change our mindset to become more flexible and adaptable. Because I think this is not the only time things are going to change, and I think the rate of change is happening so quickly that we're a little bit overwhelmed. I think we have to be ready for a constant process of change. That's what I would say.
I want to add one other thought, because something you said triggered this. But there's a difference between partnering and collaboration and operating like a system, right? We've got to move away from working in our silos, doing a lot of handshaking and expressing appreciation for each other's work, and really looking at what the system experience is for individuals. Because once we operate like a system, then we scale.
I think that's critical, and that came up this morning on our housing panel. The fact that we should not make residents and individuals in need do the work to try to figure out where they should go next. We shouldn't just go to a sheet of paper and say, good luck, here's the phone number. But we should sit down together, whether it's housing, whether it's food, whether it's a job, and figure out what our different rules are, our different processes are, so that people have a roadmap and not a contact sheet.
And think about the damage that that does to us in our funding, because if we make navigating the system so hard, then we're not producing the outcomes that we could be. And if we produce amazing outcomes collectively together as a system, we don't have to rely on federal funding. There are so many other sources that we can go after funding together because we have these amazing outcomes.
Absolutely, and I wanted to point out, and a minute here to come later in the day, but we started this morning with an official signing between the Calumet Township Trustee as well as United Way of Northwest Indiana, where we have signed on two charity tracks, joining 4 other townships in Northwest Indiana, where we can begin to operate in a systematic way and expand those relationships so that we are better serving the residents of Calumet Township. One last question before we go to our public questions. If you could change one thing about the workforce development system in Northwest Indiana, and whether that's something that we do better, something that we could start, what would that one thing be? You had the magic wand. So think about that. And I know both of you are brilliant and work so well in this space.
I think we shouldn't be shy about holding each other accountable.
Say more.
All right, well, I will.
We're not going to be politically correct today, so.
So, in the 4 years that I've been in this role, I mentioned to you earlier that I came into this role because I wanted to change the system. There are too many people that have had a bad experience at Work One. It's been a very transactional, bureaucratic mindset, and I'm trying to change that. But I don't know what I don't know. And I need to hear the feedback on the ready when it's happening about those experiences. And of course, given the opportunity to change that experience and write it. It's taking too long because I don't think people are being brutally honest with me. That's an example.
Thank you. So that's an opportunity for other nonprofit organizations, including government organizations like the trustee's office, to give that feedback, think about what we've heard from our constituents in terms of their experience. So that's a deliverable that we can work on collaboratively.
Yeah, you can do that.
Constructive feedback. Ellen?
Yeah, that's I'm having a really tough time thinking of an answer. I'm just going to be honest to that question because there's so many places that I want to start. But I think that from the individual's perspective that's in the community, I think information flow would be the first thing that I would want to tackle, right? And so how, if there was a magic wand I could wave, I would want them to get the information they need to make the best decisions they can make and get connected. That's what.
We have to help them do that. We have to create that tool. Thank you. So we're going to take public questions. I know Dr. Joe White is in the midsection over here. Will be our first question. Think of your questions or brief comments. We are mindful of time. Dr. White.
Mine is more of a comment. Listen, if all of us, many of us, particularly at my age level, know the great apprenticeship in the country was started right here at USD, which presented us with Fragrant School and Emerson School. We started training managers at Emerson, started training workers at Fragrant. You had yet men retiring at 45 years old because of the training system. Now, you have an opportunity, Gary Field, a place where you have the greatest opportunity for training. You got IU. You got, which is one of the greatest education systems. You've got Purdue, which may be number 1 or 2 in the area of farm, as well as technology. You got Ivy Tech, which reaches down from 10, 11, 12 years old up. You got the greatest basic system in the country to start. It's up to our leaders to understand that. And in understanding that, we have to understand that if we take these young people who are athletes and take our parks, rebuild our park system where we can train and control the activity of our young people. All right, the richest people that come from our community come out of the park system. They come out of athletics. Then they go into technology. Then they go into industry. And we're going to have to teach farmers. These are things that I have been introduced to from a young level, very young level. And this is what we have to continue to do here. We've got the facility. We can build one of the greatest health systems in the country right out of this area. It's up to our leadership to put these kinds of things together. And that's what we've got the facilities. So now it's left up to us, and it's left up to our leaders to choose people who can do this. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. How are you doing, Dr. Jeff? You doing all right? Silly around. We have it right here.
I hate to go with the people here. You mentioned earlier about the population markets.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned earlier about the population from aging and about statistics. So my question is, what happens when you have young fellas? And we know there are a lot of young fellas engaged in smoking marijuana, so let's keep looking at it. So what happens when the common carry skills, but when you send them, because they cannot get the job because of the marijuana. That's one question. The other question I have is when people come from the workforce, is there a staggered level of use of the program? What I mean, when so many people come to the program, they may already have some of the soft skills or some of the skills that we have. And what I have heard from feedback is that they get frustrated, they're starting where they want to get another part. So if there's some opportunity to not put everybody in the same, every department that the county economy. That was one thing. And when you talk about workforce development, you're talking about resources. And I'm talking about you and the people in this area that have to move on. Because I've seen referrals to different people to hire people with skills. But maybe what we don't want to really look at is that they don't see anything wrong with their ones, so it's being done by the big people to say that. And so that takes away from getting jobs when you send people like Neil, carpentry, all of them who random tests. Because it is a job that's recognized by somebody else. So that is a big drawback. Workforce development in the finance out of this area.
Very good point. Feedback, and we know that, we mentioned this earlier, a lot of the careers that thrive in our area, transportation, construction, healthcare, have drug tests, right? And
Because there are safety issues
absolutely,
associated.
it's like ocean, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of young people, because it's legal in Michigan, it's legal in Illinois, and the culture now, even in states where it's not legal, right, people say it's okay, right? And so a lot of young people just presume it's not going to be a problem, right? And they start early and continue, and then it's hard to.
Yeah, and I wish I had an answer to this, but within my own family, I've got a lot of nieces and nephews that are in their 20s, and well, they do live in Illinois, so at least they're legal, but
It's still a federal crime. I mean,
I know. I don't even, like, I don't have a solution to that. I've had conversations with local legislators, around this who say that, they will never, they're from here, they will never vote for the legalization of marijuana because they feel that it's destroyed, the youth base, right, that could be taken advantage of. I had a nephew that, he loved his marijuana, and I have a lot of connections. I could have helped him get on pathways to skilled trades, but it was his personal choice. Now, the good news is that in time, right, he came to realize that a good paying job was more important than that. I don't know the solution to that, except that as a community, we've got to lift up the narrative around, good paying jobs, and the prosperity, right, that comes with that. Sometimes people just can't see it. We have to help them see what comes along with that.
Microphone.
You have anybody identify that is willing to volunteer to mentor? And I ask that question because I work with a lot of young adults. And what I hear from them is I need to be connected to a mentor man to help me. And as you work with the program, with the one and community involved, men in the community that's willing
Yeah,
to mentor, that's something I'm interested in.
yeah.
All right, question to my left here, Ms. Mary Cosby.
Good afternoon. As we look at all of the opportunities that are coming into the city of Gary with FedEx, with the convention center, with Hard Rock, what is going to be done to assist with removing checking the box and helping justice impacted people be a part of the opportunities that are coming?
Thank you, very good question.
So, Mary, justice involved youth and/or adults are very much a priority population for us, and we have been very actively seeking additional funding specifically for that. So we are part of a consortium of urban workforce boards in the Midwest that has been very effective at getting those awards. So, we may partner with Indianapolis, who's a member, Detroit, St. Louis, multiple members will go together to apply for those grant opportunities. We actually just found out that we were awarded the next round of the GO grant. And so with our partners, Goodwill has probably been the primary. Geminis has taken some of the caseloads. One of the missing pieces for us is sometimes the violence prevention partners. And so here we are back to partnerships, right? There's a lot more to that than just the case management piece, which is what, we do, Goodwill does, those partners. So the good news is employers are far more open to hiring individuals that have been involved with the Justice Department than they were before, right? It's a pain point, right? I mean, this is what produces change. There's a level of dissatisfaction with the number of workers that are available, so they change their policies, which is good news. But it's also a priority for my adult education director. It's like a personal passion of hers to, and we've improved our relationship with the corrections, with Kimbrough. So we are always working to find more resources outside of what we have relied on in the past.
Thank you. Other questions?
Good afternoon. Thank you for attending. My name is Martina Montgomery, and I am a proud owner of Steel City Staff. I've been working on this for the past several years, and I'm very happy to announce that we are actively replacing people in employment, and I'm a small business. My question to you is, how do I get better connected with the companies in Calumet region that we can send our people to?
Yeah, I'm glad that you raised this question because I thought of it. There was another question. One of the points that I wanted to make today was that we've got to get more employers involved in this. And I think the mayor is, committed to that. I know that we could engage Chuck Hughes and his membership. It's a roundabout, but I'm going to get you an answer. The high school, that high school graduation requirements are changing, right? And so with that,
Maybe say more about those changes, if you can.
okay. So, in addition to, college, higher education, as you said earlier, the higher level of education, the higher degree, generally, upward mobility exists, right? So we always want that, but college isn't for everybody. So they are creating a track that students can choose that allow them to be job ready when they graduate and have work-based learning experiences. So, and employers are already stepping up to provide youth in particular, like I said earlier, whatever youth need, adults need, these work experiences so that they're acquiring those skills and building their resume. So we have a business services team within the Work One office that has relationships with employers, and we do have training dollars that we can, they're not unlimited, but that we can provide employers, to take on somebody that maybe has 8 of the 10 skills, that they're looking for, called on-the-job training. So we're always interested in partnering, finding ways to fulfill the needs that the employers have and reach new employers when we have job seekers who are interested in a particular job, finish the training. So I think we should have a conversation about that.
Other questions, comments? Let's give the mic to you. Thank you. Former art educator, Gary Community School Corporation.
You know, I'm totally against tracking, because once kids are tracked in high school, that's what the new government's putting out, you cannot get out of it. Which means that some children will not be able to go to college because they're going to be tracked into another position. And I think all parents need to be aware of that.
Very good point. Other questions or comments?
I'd like to comment on Mary.
Okay.
I'd like to comment Mary Cosby on justice involved individuals. There was an organization that was dealing with reentry and justice involved individuals. And the fact of our work that too. So what happened, they need to come out of to help identify the issue and then target them into an organization like World War II, that's what they were doing. So there was an ongoing organization within the city. There was something with just involved individuals. And the reason for that is that most of the people coming out of the prisons were men of color, young men of color. So there was a big push to see how we help them. So there is an organization that was dealing with them with law and all other organizations too. And also to provide them with outreach services that they need just kind of respond.
Thank you. Very briefly, Dr. White, and then we're going to give our panelists an opportunity to make some closing.
Let me just tell, plumbers, electricians, cement finishers make a great deal more money annually than most of our educators. Some of my cement finishers make close to $200,000 a year. Most of you got a retired teacher, Mr. Hammond. Mr. Hammond probably made more money after he left school than he did in school. So let's look at these special jobs. This is something that I started teaching in 1968 because I was making $9,000 a year at Dole. And I spent one summer back in the something that I learned in high school and made $9,000 in 3 months. So these people, let's train these people in skill-based employment.
Thank you very much. And I think that's a good point. And college is not necessarily for but we do want to make sure that people have the foundational skills so that they can avail themselves of those opportunities. And I think one comment that came up later that there is a correlation between academic or educational attainment and the poverty level, especially when you want to move up to management, right? Opportunities and administrative opportunities. So it is a mix. And one of the things we talked about was lifelong learning. That is not get a degree and then you're done, right? It's a journey of continuing to retool and upskill, that critical word that you said, no matter how old you are or how long you have been in the workforce. I wanted to give both of our panelists an opportunity to sort of wrap up in a way that anticipates what we should be doing over the next 4 to 5 months as we prepare to reconvene in October and talk about the results. What did we do coming out of this symposium that was meaningful for the residents of Calumet Township and as it relates to this conversation from a workforce development perspective?
So, you know, there's a lot of momentum in the city of Gary right now. There's a lot of opportunity that is on the horizon. I mean, not just on the horizon, it's here, it's on the horizon. One of the things that I would like to see happen, and I've had conversations with the mayor about this, I would really like to see a City of Gary workforce development strategy that lays out, you know, the next 3, 5, 10 years. So that, because I do believe that workforce development has to happen from within to be sustainable, there are so many players, not just in this room, but so much good work happening. But for me, I see a lot of growing in different directions. And I think that if we could even just get together and map, you know, like visually, the initiatives that are happening, understand who's doing what, and prioritize knowing what the economic development arm of the city is doing and what's coming, get everybody on the same page about how their work rolls up into that overarching workforce development strategy for the city of Gary. I know that's, I'm like, I don't know if any of us in this room can make that happen, but voices and that request chiming in together, you know, could help make that happen.
Absolutely, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm glad you went first. My job is so much easier to ditto, right? But I would also add that when that's completed, because I'm not going to say it's not going to be completed, this is going to be, we need workforce development strategy. It would be really exciting and interesting, I think, to create a dashboard that can then communicate all that information, all that hard work back to the community in a way that they can connect to it.
Are you volunteering?
Yes, I am. I certainly work with other partners.
And I think one of the important things I heard in that recommendation is 3 to 5 to 10 year strategy. And what that says to me as a former politician is that we don't need a new strategy every time there's a new mayor, right? Or a new council member, or a new, and so we're in this unending new strategy, new plan, new strategy, new plan, where when you look at a lot of cities that have been successful, it's because there were actors beyond elected officials, whether it was the nonprofit community, the education community, the employers, the Chamber of Commerce, who are there regardless of who's in office, right? To ensure that the work continued, that it moved forward. And so I think that's an important part of this, that we don't get caught up in a person's vision, right? But in what the community's vision, and the community's plan that involves the diverse groups. So I'm excited about our homework. We have a lot of homework. And I want to give this great panel, Lisa, Ellen, wonderful job. We look forward to working with you. Wow, what a day. I do want to acknowledge 2 elected officials, speaking of elected officials, who have come in the room, both of whom are former council colleagues of myself as well as Trustee Atkins. I think they've been really busy out there at the county building. I see Lake County Councilman Ronald G. Brewer, right there. And then I think my city council person, I think she's still here, 1st District Council President Lori Latham. Thank you so much for being here today. Well, as we wrap up, let me thank our trustee, Diane Atkins, for you know, I'm known for coming up, people who've worked with me before, Ron was looking back there, coming up with crazy ideas and seeing if we're able to move forward on that. But Trustee Atkins and I have developed enough trust that she trusted me with this crazy idea, and here we are. Thank you, Trustee, for her vision for the township. She didn't know 5 months ago that she would be standing here, and I certainly didn't know that I would be standing here but it's because of the way God works, right, in mysterious ways, that Trustee Atkins is now taking our township in a good direction, building on the work that preceded us. Building on the fact that we have a healthy budget, right? And we are taking on so many initiatives, and I know our staff is here today. We are very busy. We announced that starting this week, Calumet Township Trustee is open every single day. It was on a 4-day work week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if you need services, we are not closed on Friday anymore. So from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., you can come to the Calumet Township Trustee office. You can see a case manager. The order writer is there on one of these terms. And you can get the help and direction and assistance you need. We are in the process of working on ensuring that after 4 p.m. on the weekdays and during the weekend, that we have folks at the ready on the phone and a location to help you, because we recognize that problems don't stop at 4:01 p.m. on Friday and start back on Monday morning at 8 a.m. or Tuesday morning if it's a holiday. So we're already starting to think about how do we ensure that 24/7, 365, if you're a resident of Calumet Township and need help, you can get access to the information and services that you need, and that we're charged to provide for you. We're excited about that. We said earlier, we've signed up with the charity tracker, so we're looking forward to working with United Way. Courtney was here earlier, so our case management team will be training to learn how to join the 100 plus organizations in Northwest Indiana to ensure that we're using that system effectively, efficiently, and in a way that ultimately benefits the president, right? So that they can, if we can't help you, we can build that relationship to refer you to a nonprofit provider to do that work. Over the next 5 months, our plan is where do we go from here? From the housing panel, the nutritious food access panel, which Trustee Atkins led, to the workforce panel. We've got a lot of great ideas, a lot of recommendations, many of which have been generated by your questions, by your comment, by your feedback, and the interplay between community and panelists, right? So now we got to do the work. And we're going to prepare a readout that will come out this week that will summarize many of the ideas that we've talked about today so that we can hold ourselves accountable to do that work over the summer and beyond to reconvene in October. And so October 23rd is our current date, so mark that on your calendar. We don't know the location yet, but it will be out there for you to reconvene and talk about results, right? We know the problems, we know the challenges, and we know many of the players who are going to widen the table to engage issues like mental health, veteran services, and dig a little deeper. So we're excited about the future. Make sure that you fill out your survey. We want your feedback. You can place your survey right here on the table. Give it to me, but I feel it put it on the table. You can turn it over. We'll silence it. We'll see what you have to say. But be constructive, right? Both of us, lawyer, MBA, politician, we're used to taking critical feedback. So we want to be better and we want to be relevant. All right? Now we're going to talk about this. We're going to have some closing comments from Calumet Township Trustee Diane.
William, my friend, he is a great. I'll be brief. I want to thank all the subject matter experts who were here participating. We're really looking forward to having continued conversations with you all. I also want to thank my team again, the Calumet Township Trustee Office team. You all can stand up. Yes, I said stand up. Thank you so much for your support and for being part of the strategy, especially my planning team, Deputy, as well as Commissioner Jackson, Community Engagement Manager, and Ms. Amy Cohen, my Executive Assistant, who thoroughly appreciate all the efforts that you all made in bringing this event together. I hope that you all felt this was helpful. Yes? So we just want to reiterate that this administration is about results. William stated that we will be reporting out. William stated that we'll reconvene in the fall. We are results driven. So we're not here just to talk. We didn't put on this effort just to have, what do we call it, swag out and et cetera, right? We are true workers, we're doers. We love the community in which we have been blessed to serve in, and it's a pleasure to serve as your Calumet Township Trustee. I invite you all to give us feedback again if you're not comfortable related to the survey. Please make sure that you utilize that email address and look forward to other activities that we have coming up in the forefront. These 3 pillars are just the start of it. But we have more effort to do than changing the trajectory of the township and the region as well. And so again, I thank you all for hanging in there with us throughout this long day. I hope that you can take back what you received and go tell the community that it's positive, right? That you enjoyed your time here and that my team has done a great job of impacting day by day the efforts of the trustee office. So thank you so much.
And I want to especially call out people who I sent text messages to at 6 a.m. and probably 11 p.m. and all day long, and meeting multiple times a week. Kamisha Jackson, who's been there, come to the front. Whitney Chapman, who has been critical of our panels today, and the hour that you have, the packets that you have before you. Sandy Kogan, who is our public relations. Kim Backus, who joined us to help today on school committee. Where is Sabrina Scott? She may be downstairs, but all of them, every Monday and multiple days a week and on the weekends, we've been in constant communication over the last 2 months to pull this together. We've only been here less than 4 months, right? And we pulled together community partners from all over Northwest Indiana. Did you have a good time today? I want to thank all of our panelists. We've had great subject matter experts. We've had great doers throughout the day. All of them know Gary, are involved in Gary, are working in the community in some capacity. We want to thank all of our panelists. Give them a round of applause. Definitely want to thank our very own Chef Blake, who was on the panel, but also did an excellent healthy eating demonstration. I think it was some vegan ceviche or something like that. So if you didn't catch it, I'm sure it's going to be on social media. He did an excellent panel following up on our nutritious food panel. I think I just forgot to. Yes, absolutely. And as I remind people, we are going to be emphasizing this heavily. Calumet Township Trustee is not just the city of Gary, right? It is also unincorporated Calumet. So we were happy to have Calumet New Tech High School choir providing entertainment. And they even brought out the screens to accompany the chorale. So it was wonderful to do that. We're going to be doing more in our unincorporated areas. We've had a lot of legislation, so there'll be a lot of activity that you will see coming out of this office in response to legislation, but also in response to what you've heard today and to the vision of Trustee Atkins. We look forward to seeing you on October 23rd. Please fill out your survey, let us know how we're doing, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.